Morning, it's Martin's Engine Services. Well, it's time for the old what's happening in the workshop on Wednesday. I thought we'd start outside for a moment because the storm has just subsided. And it's now quite a nice, pleasant but fresh morning. Just had a quite amazing piece of rain. I wish I'd actually videoed it. It was raining in the back garden here, about up as far as the washing line. And if you drew a line straight across through the middle of the house here, that's where the rain stopped. And out the front was completely dry with a rainbow. Quite bizarre. I was sitting in my lounge having a bit of breakfast, and suddenly it descended. And I looked out the front. I thought, oh, I can hear all this rain. There's no rain. I looked out the back, and it's absolutely lashing down. I peered out, and it's exactly halfway through the middle of the house. So, yeah, quite bizarre one, that one. Talk about localised shower. Anyhow, what are we doing in the workshop? Well, I'm waiting for the Peugeot 505 to come back for retest today, the one I took down on Monday. Failed on a couple of tyres and an advisor on one other, but customer's taking it away and he's having all three tyres done. And he's popping it back to me in a minute, and we're going to, not in a minute, before lunch, and we're going to get it retested. A nice family. I do quite a few of their cars, and it's his son who's got the famous Seat Ibiza, or Ibiza, even to call it. The one I nicknamed Old Creaky, where I was chasing suspension bushes. Remember the one I did one bush, or one each side, and then the other one went? And then we cured that, and the day after that, one of the front springs broke. So they're a really nice family, and it's nice to do a bit of work for them. They're actually related to my neighbour, and which is how I made the contact. So that's a little something to do. Otherwise, not a lot happening. Got a little job to do over the weekend. Keeps me amused. But otherwise, I've been back on the old tractor. Did a load of riding around in it the last few days, or yesterday rather. Made up the new transmission mounts. I haven't painted them yet, but they're now very sturdy, and it's made a huge difference. It made a really huge difference. The back of the machine doesn't wobble around at all now, and the transmission is definitely not brilliant, but I think it may be right for what I want. I did notice, particularly yesterday while I was doing all the driving up and down, there's the pedal here for the clutch and brake combined was jangling around and rattling, and there's a lot of vibration coming from this area. And underneath there, you have actually got four pulleys that run the two belts. One's for the power takeoff, and one's for the sort of clutch belt system. So I thought I'd take it all to pieces. I've had a couple of the pulleys off, and one of them was C-solid, and I've re-greased the bearing, but the bearing is very noisy. So they are a plastic pulley, and the bearing is actually pressed into the middle of it. So I very, very carefully machined off the little shoulder where they sort of mould it almost, and then I got the bearing out. Here he is. And I pressed him out, and I had another bearing, and I pressed it in, and it's worked a treat. I can get a new pulley, they're not much money, but I just wanted to see if that was the problem. By the feel of this, I think the little ball bearings in there are now hexagonal. It's not too noisy now, but when it's under load, it's really bad. So that fixed that. But what an absolute mission to take the pulleys off from underneath. They really are a truly horrible design. What you've basically got, light on the matter, you've basically got is two versions of this. So you've got the engine here, your crank pulley, which obviously runs all the time, and here is the pulley on top of the transmission. And here, and the belt drives in this direction. And you've got these two pulleys here, which are effectively on a plate with a sort of a pivot, and then there's a variety of linkage. And what happens is these two pulleys rotate around this linkage like effectively like this, and tighten the belt. So once they're running, you've got the pulleys are like, so the belt effectively does that. It tightens the belt up here, then the V of the belt grabs in the pulleys and away it drives. These aren't under any serious load whatsoever. It basically relies on that. It's what you call a slipping belt clutch. Now this has two of them underneath here. So this is the top of the machine up here with the engine here. You have one for the power takeoff, which has two pulleys on a linkage. And this is on a pivot with a bearing and another linkage and another shaft and a rod, and a bit goes to the back. And this is the one for the actual transmission. Now, this one bolts to there, this one bolts on another pin, this one bolts on to a shared stud on one of these pulleys with all its associated linkage, and there's a huge spring going that way. This one's got a huge spring going that way, and they've all held in with nuts and bolts. And then to actual look at the pulley, there's the belt. Where the belt runs, the pulley's actually got a shoulder on to stop the belt falling out, and it has this metal bracket over the top which is adjustable, which has to run quite close to the pulley to stop the belt falling off when it's loose. Now all that lot is packed in under the tractor, and they have welded a couple of studs on to make it easier, but one of the pivots here is a bolt. There is a little bearing in here and a little bush, and then there's a bolt coming through, nut and bolt. Now I'll show you where the head of this bolt is, and well, we can just get in there. I think we might need to get a little bit of light on the subject. Right, that's better. Now you see this bolt here, let's move this wire back a little bit. Right, this bolt here is hidden, or not hidden, but it's tucked right up against this metal shoulder. Shoulder here. You can just about get a socket on it, and that's it. Now, that is remarkably horrible to get to. And you've got to hold that from the top whilst coming up from underneath round the various linkage to undo this bolt. You've got to battle the springs off first. You can't get the belts off because they're hooked over the PTO clutch, electromagnetic clutch, so they're all hanging in the way. Then you've got to build this assembly up, but get all the belt pulleys orientated the right way, get it all lined up and get everything back on. That took me hours, and what an absolute mission that was. And this basically is packed into a space literally about that high. Pulley, belt, pulley, linkage. So rods going across, rods going everywhere. So quite a fight. And one of the pulleys, there's actually a stud welded to the chassis here. Let me think, there's a stud, yeah, that's the chassis. There's a stud welded on, and one of the pulleys sits here. And this one is actually seized onto the stud. Now, fortunately, it's a good pulley. It's not dry. The bearing's good. And one of the pivots, one of the others is under here, and blah blah blah. So it is a real absolute fight to get off. I spent hours and hours on it. I've re-greased a couple of pulleys. I put a new bearing in one of them, and now that has made a huge difference. It's much smoother and it's not snatching so much. I think the belt was literally just grabbing when the pulley was rattling, etc., etc. So we had a victory on that one, and I think at that point in the day I should have given up. However, I decided to assemble the bagger unit. Now, I now understand why people hate working on these. What an absolute nightmare to put this together. See, this bracket here bolts to this, and it bolts to the frame at the bottom, but you've got to slide the netting over the frame. There's nothing to hold the two halves of the frame together here, apart from this clamp round bracket, which is part of this. Now, the only thing holding this to the top here is this clamp. So all this wants to fall out, the netting wants to slide off. All these fixtures bolt through the netting. You're trying to get these on, get that lined up, get that in the bottom, get those in. You see it, get that in, get this in, get that to line up, and get this all in at the same time, whilst this side, of course, is all falling over, and you're trying to do the same. This was, again, hours of frustration. But finally, we've got it all together. Now, I know the poor old bag's not in the best of shape here. The worst of the problem is obviously this here. I'll probably just staple or something, a little piece of fabric over it or something. There's no other major holes around the bottom. A bit of a gap there, but it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine for what I want. There's two hinge brackets to screw down here, so the whole assembly hinges. But, oh boy, what a mission. I definitely wouldn't want to work on these things all day. I thought cars were bad enough, but The love of nuts and bolts as well, no trap nuts, makes it even worse. So, and everything underneath there, like the deck mechanism and all the other bits, there's still, everything has a huge spring on it. And everything looks a bit sketchy. When you start undoing things, things start flying off and brackets start moving here and linkages and yeah. Certainly was good fun. But no, let's move things along quite nicely now. On the transmission front, I did run it around for nearly an hour yesterday. On at lower speeds, the transmission is definitely slipping. But there is a sweet spot where you can get it slightly further up the speed range but drop the engine revs, and it moves along nicely at the speed for sweeping. I've got a belt on order, and I'm going to attach the sweeper and power it up. I'm going to put the bagger unit on temporarily, and then I'm going to give it some testing to see if the transmission can cope with the load. If it can't, then I'll just have to find another parts machine with probably a 5-speed manual box on it. Although I am tempted to try and obtain some of the gear oil, the proper hydrostatic fluid, because possibly that the oil I've got in there may be a little bit too thick. So I may get a couple of litres of that if I can, cheap enough, and literally give it a try. It's probably going to cost 20 odd quid, and it might be worth it. Because otherwise the transmission's great, the differential works well, it reverses okay. A little juddery again at low revs in reverse, but it seems to pull all right. And I say, so I might lash and do that, but I can give it all a proper test now and see if it all works, and that should be it. I'm going to do a few of the other buttoning up jobs today, try and get a few bits and pieces finished. I'm going to even go mad and attempt to repair the bonnet, which is missing some. There should be some brackets, some holes here, and this bolts inside sort of like this, and I'll just have to get a bit of creative with a bit of metal and a few rivets, I think. But that's what I'm up to today anyhow. So there's not a lot else happening really. It's very quiet. I've got a couple of jobs next week, so a little job to do for somebody on Sunday, but otherwise it's quite worryingly quiet really. I think most people seem to be at the moment. Well, when I get my MOTs done, they're always busy because they're a very popular MOT station, and a couple of other MOT stations in the area closed down when the DVSA changed a load of the rules on emissions equipment, I think it was. So they've got the bulk of some extra work. But other than that, it is very quiet. Still, I've got this to get on with. I might as well get this finished. Oh, and on the battle of the tyres, we're now at basically 3.5 tyres. This one here that kept going down, stopped going down. It's now started to go down again, but only down to about £8 per square inch. It should have 12 in it, and you blow it up to 12 and it will creep down to 8 and stay there. I know the valve's sealing, so I guess there's a tiny little leak somewhere which just closes up when the pressure gets down. So I think I'll leave that one alone. I'm not going to battle that anymore. That one's now fine. That's the very poorly tyre. We don't talk about that one. So I put a couple of tubes in the fronts and they're good to go. So I think we'll live with just blowing that one up. I can't be doing with fighting that tyre off again. I think I've had enough of doing battle with some of these bits. It's quite good fun doing all this sort of thing, but it is very frustrating because there's so many little bits and pieces and awkward little bits and things that make you go, oh, who designed this? But there you go. We're nearly operational, and I have actually, yes, believe it or not, I will show you this evidence. I have painted the engine cover for the Lister G1. I've given it one coat of paint, and I'll give it another coat later on today. There we go, look at that. It's actually finally happened. So I said I'd do it, and I have. And I've got to get the green paint out and paint a couple of bits on the framework. Just got to paint these couple of bits. And then I can actually put the cover on and a few other bits, and it's getting all nicely. So I haven't forgotten about the poor old girl. But it will look nice with that cover on. I might just paint the exhaust sticks through. I might paint some of that up, and got the radiator filler neck I made using some steel plug thing I found and a bit of brass pipe, and got the bits and pieces I welded up there. I've even made a little pipe to come up here, a clear plastic hose. This rad cap isn't a rad cap anymore. It's just a sealing cap, so the water flows through and the water can come out here. I've got a clear plastic pipe comes up the side here as a sight indicator to see how much water's in it. So I thought that should look quite good. Anyhow, that's enough of me rambling on about nothing much in particular. More progress on the tractor. I think this is going to turn into a 10-part series, this one. So I was reviewing some of the footage when I first got this and saw how awful it looked and beaten and battered and covered, and see how far it's come. I thought that's looking rather good. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Please like and subscribe, and hopefully I can find some more interesting content, but at the moment not a lot. I didn't really want a video doing an oil change in a Peugeot 505 diesel, because I mean it's yes, exactly, say no more. Anyhow, thanks again and bye for now.